Hi, I'm Dr. Matthew Krieger. I'm the CEO of Million Dollar PPO Coaching and Consulting. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be discussing practice management in general, the new paradigm of the business of dentistry and practice management. We're going to be talking about ways to be more efficient and hopefully ways to generate more revenue, make some more money, have a better life, be less stressed, have a better team. As not only the CEO of Million Dollar PPO Coaching and Consulting, but also a general dentist with a full-time private practice. I have a lot of experience and a lot of exposure to what's gone on in dentistry, the changes that have occurred in the business of dentistry, and how to have a practice that sees fewer patients, generates more money, is less stressful, has higher quality care. All of the things that I think we all want and all have in common. So I'm excited to have you on today's webinar, and I hope that you have a great hour and really learn some things that you can take towards your practice. At the end of today's webinar, of course, you'll have the opportunity to set up a complimentary call with Million Dollar PPO to talk to us about your business and your goals and your life and what you're trying to accomplish, so that hopefully we can help you build the practice that you want, that helps support the life that you want. So let's get right into it and talk a little bit about my favorite subject, which is me. I am, as I said, a full-time general dentist. And I started my practice in 2002 after graduating from New Jersey Dental School and then doing a residency in New York City at Sinai in the Bronx, VA. I did my associateship for a couple of years, bounced around from practice to practice, as so many of us have done, worked part-time here and part-time there, which is a load of fun. And then I started my practice from scratch in mid-2002. Now, when I was an associate, I thought I had all the answers. I was focused on dentistry. I was excited to be going to work every morning. What I didn't know was that the owner of the practice had sort of a different viewpoint about where he wanted his business to be. And on my birthday, you can imagine this, the same day my wife has planned a 30th birthday surprise party for me, my owner decides to let me go. First and last time I've ever been fired, knock on wood. And, at the time I was totally devastated by this decision, but I think it was, in retrospect, the best thing that could have happened to me, because it sort of pushed me out of my comfort zone. And that's where we all like to live, inside of our comfort zones, and drove me to start my own practice. Now, starting my own practice, it was the best decision I've ever made and the worst decision I've ever made. It was the best decision I've ever made because, of course, here I am now. I have a successful practice. I am the CEO of a coaching company. I enjoy what I do on the dental side. I enjoy what I do on the consulting side. But when I started it, that's not how it happened. I went into this completely naive about the business of dentistry versus the clinical practice of dentistry. When I started my practice, it was all about clinical dentistry. In my mind, and in many of yours, and so many of our clients' minds, what I thought was, if I'm a great dentist, if I do good dentistry, if my margins are tight, if my bonds are strong, if my dentures have great retention, whatever, I'll make a bunch of money. And I wish that were the case in 2017, but it's just not. Dentistry is two things. It's a clinical pursuit. It's you working with your patients to make them healthier, to have better lives for them, to make them more sound orally and physically. That's one side. And the other side is you're the CEO of a corporation. You own a company. It has to generate revenue. It has expenses. It has hiring and firing and team members. And because of how we came up in dentistry, because of our educational style, because of the focus and pursuit of clinical excellence, so much of most of our focus is on that clinical side. And so much of our stress and anxiety and tension, and quite frankly, so many of the limitations for our success come from that business side. So, for me, the clinical side was what I thought was going to make or break me. And really what I learned, and we'll go through that, was that it was the business side that was going to make all the difference in the world. So I start my practice in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. For those of you that know Jersey, it's a nice suburban neighborhood, mixed blue collar, white collar, lots of people that commute to New York City for jobs, finance and insurance, so forth and so on. It was a built out office. It had 3 treatment rooms. One operatory worked, one operatory had a chair, but the chair didn't work so well. And the other operatory was a kitchen. I had one employee. I am married to her still. She worked kind of in the office at the front and helping me out in the back a little bit with 0 experience. I was here part-time. Believe it or not, I was rocking a beeper. I would go to my other jobs, and then she would page me if patients called or scheduled. We had no patients. We had no clue. Gosh, I think we even had a DOS operating system, like the practice management software. It was like a green screen. It was really terrifying. For some of you, you're probably too young to even know what a DOS operating system is, but there was no mouse. There was no cursors. You typed in numbers. It was easier to use pen and paper, quite frankly. We were fortunate that we were both from the neighborhood. My wife is a wonderful personality, and she's great on the phone. We had no intention of joining or signing up with insurance companies. It was sort of accidental. Patients would call. They would ask kind of 2 questions. Hey, are you taking new patients? Which in retrospect is sort of a strange question. Of course, not to sound desperate, but of course we're taking new patients. We desperately need them. And the other question was, hey, do you take Aetna or Delta or MetLife? My wife would say, yes, we're taking new patients. And, because she didn't want to say no and have a difficult conversation, and perhaps because she didn't have any training, she would ask about their insurance, and she would say, well, we don't take that, but we would be happy to sign up for it and be in network with you. So let's go ahead and get you on the schedule. And sort of accidentally and for better or worse, she kind of signed us up with a whole load of insurance companies. It was not intentional. I had no plan. There was no business design behind it. It just sort of happened. Again, in retrospect, it was probably a great decision. At the time, it was just necessity. We had chairs. We needed money. The chairs were empty. People had insurance. Put 2 and 2 together, and you get kind of 4. Because of that, because we're in a busy neighborhood, maybe because I was a decent dentist, but who knows, we grew the practice to full-time in about 2 years. We were collecting just over $500,000. I now had 2 full-time employees, and our hourly collection rate, the HCR, which most of you probably are not familiar with, was about $366. Now, remember that number because it's important later on in our conversation. So here in 2004 really begins the transformation or revelation, maybe even if you want to call it that, for me in the business of dentistry. We were making a nice living. The practice was doing well. It was growing. And when a business grows, it incurs costs. And when a small business grows and you need to expand employees and physical space, adding chairs, adding computers, adding people, not only do your variable expenses like crowns and glue and labs go up, but so do your fixed expenses. And so what we experienced after 2004 and into 2005 and 6 was that the business was growing, but so was how much the business cost to run. And when we looked year to year, 2004 to 2005 to 2006, what we found was we were generating more revenue. So the collection or the top number was bigger, which is always kind of what we're striving for. But the bottom number was actually getting smaller. I was making less money and quite frankly, significantly less money. Employees are expensive. I bought some chairs, which I had to take a loan out for. We needed computers, which I had to take a loan out for. We bought a piece of technology, which I had to take a loan out for. There's a theme there. And all of these loans required payment, and there was taxes, and the government takes like 98% of every nickel you make if you're a dentist, it seems. So what happens now when the business is growing, I'm doing as much dentistry as I can. I'm focused on clinical dentistry. I'm taking CE courses. I'm prepping the heck out of crowns and gluing the heck out of fillings. but I'm making less and less money, and I'm more and more stressed and anxietous about what's happening in my business. What starts to happen now, I think, is what happens for most of our clients. The dentistry is manageable. It's the business of running a dental practice that really takes its toll on us. And it certainly is the thing that took its toll on me. From 2004 to 2006, my level of dissatisfaction with my practice, my personal life, just my overall feelings of fear and stress and tension and anxiety were growing in an opposite direction from my revenue, which was shrinking. I did the thing that I knew best to do. I tried to learn more about dentistry and focus on dentistry and do more procedures and perio surgery and take all these courses and Dawson and Pankey and Coys. And I really don't regret any of that stuff. I mean, it has made me a better dentist. Learning is always a positive thing in your life. So kudos to me and kudos to all of you for doing that. However, learning about crowns isn't going to help you have a better business. It's going to help you do a better crown. And I wasn't having a problem with the procedures, so to speak. It's not like my dentistry was failing. It's not like my crowns were falling out, my patients were exploding in the chair. It was about revenue and expenses and efficiency, and I knew nothing about that. So, I did what any reasonable, impatient young guy would do. I quit. I threw in the towel. I was meeting with a friend of mine randomly for dinner, and he owned a women's clothing manufacturing company and had come from a retail background. And I was sort of, having some cocktails with him and talking about, business in general. Really wasn't really talking as much as it was me venting and complaining. And I was kind of going through the litany of problems I was having in my practice and talking to him about some strategies that I was going to have to kind of sell the business and become an associate, which in retrospect is a genius plan. I mean, that's the easy way out, is being an associate. And funny, because in the midst of this conversation, he sort of looks across the table at me and says, I don't know much about dentistry, but it sounds like you have retail problems. It sounds like the problems you have is not dentistry. He was a patient of mine. He said, as far as I can tell, you're good with your hands. It sounds like your issues are not the teeth. It sounds like your issues are the systems and the policies and the procedures, the economics of your company, the leadership and management of your company. And it sounds like you've been kind of, searching for answers in the wrong place. You've been getting solutions to a problem that you certainly don't have. Doing a better crown is not your issue. Being a better business owner, being a better CEO is your issue. And I don't know why it took this conversation. Maybe I'm dense. I mean, lots of people will tell you that I am. But it was sort of a lightning bolt that went off in my head. It really, it sort of brought me into the light when he said, you have retail problems. And what he meant by that was, you have the same problems that someone owns a retail business, a sales business, a service business. Same problems. Selling more stuff, getting a better price for what you sell, having more customers buy, having a team that understands the economics and the policies and processes of your company, managing people. That was all the problems that I had. And so from kind of midway through 2006, I just changed course dramatically. And instead of wanting to get out of dentistry, which I really wanted to do, or at least the ownership of a practice, I sort of dove really deep into the business of what I did. Now, I had some external help. I had some coaching. I had some mentorship. I had a mastermind group that I worked with. I read 400 or 500 books on the business of business, not the business of dentistry. And I took all of those things in conjunction with really an amazing team. And most of them are still with me to this day from back in 2006, and put together a different strategy for how to run this practice. still focused on quality care, still focused on the patient being really important and their well-being and our relationship kind of being at the center of all this, but just organizing the practice in a much more effective way. And from '06 to '08, we doubled the size of the practice. We doubled the size of the team. We added operatories. But what most important, again, and going back to that earlier slide, we went from $366 an hour to $720 an hour. We doubled our hourly collection rate. Here we are today. So in 2016, we did just under $1.5 million in net revenue, collection, money deposited into the bank. Our overhead ended up at 57%. We have 5 full-time team members. I have 4 operatories. We work only 24 clinical hours a week. So let me stress this to you guys. For those of you looking at the number and saying, well, that's the same number that I'm at, I'm doing 1.5 million in collections on 4 6-hour days. That's it. Monday and Wednesday, 12 to 7 with an hour lunch. Tuesday, Thursday, 7:30 to 1:30. That's the whole week that we have here in this office. We work net 45 weeks, which means 180 clinical days. If you can figure out the math. And in 2016, we were at $1,373 per hour or hourly collection rate. We worked 1,080 hours. And the reason I keep focusing on hourly collection rate, guys, is because it's the thing that I'm going to look at, that you should be looking at, that determines whether or not your practice is profitable and efficient. It's the way that myself as a coach and my team as coaches look at businesses, not from top-line revenue, not from, hey, how much money did you collect, but really from how much are you collecting per hour? How much net production do you have per hour in your practice? Is there wasted time? Are there $0 hours? And the importance of that will become very evident as we move on in the conversation. But here's where we are in our practice in 2016. Now in 2017, again, in business, there's only 2 ways to go, up or down. And if you're going down, that's not a bad way to go in business. That's not a good way to go, excuse me. So in 2017, our goal is $1,550 per hour. We've actually exceeded our goal in the first quarter, which is awesome for everyone, on my team, me included. And we will probably be in the neighborhood of $1.7 million in collections on that 24-hour work week. We have Fridays off, we have weekends off, we come in late Mondays. It's a wonderful, wonderful practice and a wonderful, wonderful life. And that's the key here, guys. This conversation is about the practice of dentistry and your business, but really your life, your family, your passions, your hobbies, those things are linked together indelibly. How successful your business is, it doesn't make or break you. It's not who you are, but it certainly helps for you to have the life that you want to have. So there are a lot of assumptions when I talk about my practice and the revenue that we generate. The numbers are big relative to the amount of time that we're there. So let's just kind of dispel some of those myths. Number one, we're not doing these numbers on exotic dentistry in big cases. This is not a high-end cosmetic office where people show up here and spend $2,500, on a veneer and do 10 at a time. This is a restorative general dental practice. We see kids, we see grown-ups, we do crowns and fillings and cleanings. Occasionally, certainly, we do some aesthetic dentistry. I've taken a bunch of CE courses and gone through the Coy's Continuum and gone down to Dawson and out to LVI a little bit. So I certainly do some cases, maybe one every other month. We do some Invisalign, we do a little bit of sleep. But the general revenue stream in this practice is hygiene and restorative, perio, crown and bridge, restorative, just like yours. And the fees that we're charging to generate the amount of revenue are PPO fees. This is a PPO practice. Now, at $1 Million PPO, we don't advocate you joining insurance companies if that's not the right decision for your practice. If you're profitable and you have lots of new patients and they're buying what you're selling and they're paying your fees, great. Don't change a thing. Just be more efficient. Just generate more revenue per hour. Improve your sales techniques. Improve your leadership and management. But you don't have to join insurance companies just because. I happen to, as I had alluded to, somewhat by accident, somewhat by my wife's design, I happened to join years ago, and I've been able to make a wonderful living. The pressures in dentistry are pointing all towards, PPO insurance companies and more patients having insurance and more patients having PPO insurances. But our average fee, for instance, for a crown in my practice is probably between $700 and $800, and our average cleaning visit is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $100. So then the next, logical assumption is, well, if you're charging lower fees and you're not doing big cases, you got to be seeing 1 million patients a day, rollerblading around with like handpieces glued to you, like, going from room to room and just drill, fill, bill. But that is not the case either. I have 4 operatories. I work out of only one of them. And then I have 3 hygiene rooms or 3 additional rooms where I have hygienists seeing patients. Here's a copy of my schedule. This is March 8th of this year. The left-hand column is my restorative column, and the 3 columns for, right and middle and dead right, those are kind of hygiene overflow rooms. We schedule an hour for a hygiene patient. We schedule 30 minutes for everything smaller than that, follow-ups and deliveries and things like that. And on the left-hand side, you can see that day I had really 4 patients, and then 2 very brief, follow-ups. One early in the morning before we started, which you'll see PO, SR, that's post-op suture removal from an extraction case. And you'll see at lunchtime, my team did a CBCT 3D cone beam scan. I didn't even see the patient. So in the morning, I did a surgical case. In the afternoon, I did root canal post and crown on tooth number 14 in 2 hours. We use CAD CAM here, so our crowns are single visit. I extracted a baby tooth, and then, at the end of the day, I extracted tooth number 30 and 31 and did some bone grafting. During that time, when I was seeing those few patients, I had hygiene and some other stuff going on. And the sum total aggregate of all of those people coming through the practice and all of the procedures, more importantly, that we did on those people, because people don't generate revenue, procedures generate revenue. The sum total of all of that was a $10,342 net production day, $6,672 in collections over the counter. We had some adjustments probably from a prior day. So net, it was about a $9,000 day. 6 hours worth of dentistry and a $9,000 day. You don't have to be a mathematician to figure out that's about $1,500 an hour. On this particular day, our production was ahead of our collections, probably because we do accept assignment of benefit. We're waiting for insurance money. So the patients made their copay, but some of these procedures were probably covered at more than 50%, which would mean our accounts receivable would be up a little bit, and we wouldn't have collected the entire lump sum of all of those payments. But that money will come in. We will collect it. We will get paid by the insurance company one way or the other. Sometimes you got to fight a little bit, but we will. It wasn't a stressful day. I didn't have to see 1 million patients. I didn't work from room to room. I didn't even work out of 2 rooms. I have my 3 hygiene chairs, and yeah, they can be challenging to manage, but when you're seeing 1 patient for 2 hours and you're doing root canal, post, and crown, it gives you a lot of latitude and a lot of freedom to sort of move about the theoretical cabin without feeling too stressed out. So many times I go into your offices, guys, and you're working at a 3 ops, and you did 3 crown preps and 3 seats. You physically can't be in that many places at once. It drives you nuts. It burns you out. What you'll find at $1 Million PPO and in my practice and in the practices that we work with is we're focused on you doing more procedures, not seeing more patients. We want you seeing fewer patients, having them in your office for a longer time, and doing more dentistry on them, whether it's same-day treatment or added treatment or value-added treatment or upselling or whatever you want to call it. That's what we're focused on. We want to create a price structure in your office so that patients are more likely to accept more dentistry. I go into fee-for-service practices, and sure, they charge a lot for a crown. But what I find is if a patient needs 3 crowns, that patient takes 3 years to do those 3 crowns, 1 per year because they max their insurance out. In our office, because of our fee schedules, because of the PPO, and because of our ability to kind of work with patients, we're able to do all 3 of those crowns. And instead of 3 one-hour appointments over 3 years, we have 1 2-hour appointment, maybe, or 2.5-hour appointment, and we do all the dentistry. and I'm able to have a better life and be more profitable. So when you look at my practice versus the average practice, what you'll find is, very similar in size, 4 or 5 ops and 4 or 5 team members, and where you start to see differences are in how many hours per week we work and what our hourly collection rate is. And, this slide is pretty self-explanatory. The average doctor works about 30 plus hours a week, 50 weeks a year. That's more than 1,500 hours. And the average practice is collecting somewhere in kind of the, $750,000, $900,000 range, maybe even $1 million. And that hourly collection rate puts you around $500 an hour. Now, even at PPO fees, if you look at 4 or 5 operatories and you look at a crown being $700 and you look at cleanings being $100, $500 per hour tells me that there are lots of times during your day and lots of chairs during your day that are empty, that have no procedures being done or billed during that time, and that lowers your hourly collection rate. So here's a calculation that I'd suggest you do, if not now, then maybe after the webinar, and certainly in preparation for your follow-up call with Jason Sirchek or myself at $1 Million PPO. This number is critical. It's the number that tells us most about your practice. If you tell us you collect $1 million, it's not going to give me a lot of information. If you tell me you're at $425 an hour, it's going to give me a lot more information. So do your hourly collection rate calculation. Screenshot this slide or grab your iPhone, which is probably in your hand right now, and take a quick picture of it and do the calculation. You want to be north of $1,000, even in the PPO area, and that's where success lay for most of us. And in the fee-for-service area, you want to be north of $1,500 to $2,000 an hour very easily, guys. Some of you are going to be super stoked about your number and be like, okay, I don't need a coach. This is awesome. I can go play golf or, go out and go to the gym or just chill out on the couch. Some of you are going to be super depressed about your number. Regardless, set up some time to talk to us about that number and about what we can do for you, whether it's work less to achieve the same thing or raise that hour. And why are we so focused on raising that hour? It really has to do with the function of overhead and profitability. So I'm often asked, like, what's the average overhead in dentistry, or what's your overhead, or what should my overhead be? And the answer is it varies based on how much money you make and how productive your practice is. The reason why we focus so much on being at $1 million is really more about being at the hourly collection rate that it would take most practices to be at $1 million and getting north of that. And to be at $1 million for most practices, I would say you need to be in the $900 or $800 to $900 range. You're approaching the $1,000 mark, which I've already said is somewhat successful. And more importantly, you need to be at $1 million, or you need to try and move towards $1 million. And that's the key here. Because if we can grow your hourly collection rate, if we can raise your net production and your collections without adding any physical space or adding any team members, we will have raised your production or raised your revenue without incurring any fixed cost increases, which means the relative overhead on the growth of your business would only be your variable expenses, i.e. fillings, lab bill, your dental supply bill, and maybe some smaller, perishable costs. And in most practices, that's less than 20%. I mean, if you think about how much it would cost you extra to do an O composite on tooth number 20, from an overhead perspective on an already scheduled patient without having to add any chairs or add any team members, the overhead is minimal. And what this really means is that when you grow your practice without having to add more team members, through being more efficient, having people be capable of doing more multitasking, more situational awareness, when you're able to do more procedures in the same amount of space, using your space more wisely, being more clinically efficient, the overhead that you will experience on that growth is somewhere lower than 20%. Which means it's an 80% profit margin. So for most of our clients, for myself, when I grew from 06 to 08 and I added $500,000, for most of our clients, we can realize a dramatic increase in personal income by growing our practice by $100 or $200 an hour. And the key here is not by growing it $150,000 a year or $300,000 a year. Those numbers are too big to conceptualize for most people. The key is growing it by $50 or $100 or $200 in each hour. And when you think about that number, and you think about the procedures that you do, and you think about the patients that you have and the needs that they have, those numbers are achievable. An occlusal composite, 2 sealants, a whitening procedure, some fluoride varnish, an extra quadrant of dentistry, some periodontal scaling and root planing. There are a million small things that your patients may or may not need that could grow your revenue. And in most practices, and if you're sitting here watching this and listening to this webinar, maybe even in your practice, those procedures are there, and we're too busy doing other stuff that's not profitable. We're stepping over $100 bills to pick up $1 bills. We're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies all day long, and that's how it was in my practice. It seemed busy. I felt stressed and busy, and I was running around. At the end of the day, there was no money. What I often suggest you do, and you should do this as an exercise, when you're done, you go back to your office, tomorrow or Monday or whatever it is, take a look at the last 2 weeks worth of schedules. Grab the schedule that had the fewest patients on it, and then grab the schedule that had the most patients on it, and compare the economics of those 2 days. And I bet you'll find the day that you saw fewer patients, you made the same, if not more money than the day that you saw way more patients. And if you ask your team, and if you try and reminisce a little bit, I don't know why I would call it reminiscing, but maybe kind of think back, you'll find that the day you saw fewer patients was easier, was more manageable, was probably more enjoyable. And the day you saw 1 million patients, you probably left there with sweat on your brow, needing a cocktail and a nap. And that's not what we want the end of the day for you to be. We want you to leave your office excited and rejuvenated and looking forward to coming back. The way to do what I'm talking about doing, the way to get more out of your business without putting more into your business, by definition, is efficiency. And that's what, if you look it up in Wikipedia, be careful with Wikipedia, but if you Wikipedia it, efficiency means the ability to get more out of a system with the same energy in or less energy in. And that's what we need to focus on, is how can we take the practice you already have and get more out of it without putting more into it. I could hire you 5 more people. I could add 10 more operatories, and I could jam 1,000 more patients through your ReCare system tomorrow, and your top line revenue would certainly go up. But so would your cost, and so would your stress, and so would the amount of energy. And would that be more success for you? Working smarter, not harder, is certainly how we want to kind of tap in to our level of success. So let's talk about a couple of things, specific things that we have focused on in my practice and that we work on with our clients to help accomplish what it is that I'm talking about. So number one, the new patient phone call and existing patient phone calls. All too often I find, if I'm standing in a practice and I'm working with a team, that the conversation on the phone is variable and nebulous and a little confusing. And at the end of it, we have lots of words on a page and lots of information about someone, but not the right information. New patients, existing patients, what we want to find out from our conversations with them on the phone, believe it or not, is why are they calling? What do they want to buy? How much do they want to buy it? When do they want to buy it? What do they need? What's wrong with them? Where are they coming from? What are their philosophies? What are their thought processes? Do they like cats or do they like dogs? Do they have a big family? Are they from the neighborhood? What is going to be the thing that helps you to get them to say yes to doing some dentistry, whether it's a cleaning or a perio or a crowns or a veneer case, whatever it is. I've watched coaches and consultants and lots of companies out there teach scheduling and how to get a new patient on, and don't spend more than 5 minutes on a phone call, and never ask about money or insurance. And I say bullocks to all that stuff. I suggest you have the conversation that need be had in order to get as much information about this potential buyer as possible. Insurance is something that's important. The last time they were at a dentist is something important. what they need, what's wrong with them, going into a lengthy conversation about their specific chief complaint. How long has it hurt? Are they taking medicine? Do they floss each of their teeth every single day? You know, do they just move here? How did they hear about us? All of those things are really important. And when we get more information about a patient, it gives us the ability to be prepared for when they show up in the office to treat them. The worst thing that can possibly happen is you have a new patient, they come in, they sit down in your chair, you have an hour scheduled with them or 90 minutes or an hour with the doctor. And what you learn at the end of the appointment, when it's too late to do it, is they needed perio, or they wanted Invisalign, or they have a brown tooth in the front right over here and they wanted to have it whitened. They have insurance and they wanted to use it. They don't have insurance and they have no money. Their brother-in-law is a billionaire and he's going to pay for their veneer case. You want to find that out before they show up so that when they come, you can be ready to focus on the thing that they want. That's what makes people happy. That's what makes people buy. That's what makes people stay. That's what makes people excited about your practice. And most importantly, when it comes to new patients, and this is something very rarely discussed in dentistry, new patients are the most likely people to refer more new patients. Mrs. Jones has been coming to you for 17 years to have her dentures redone, refers less people than the new family who walks through the door and is super excited about your awesome practice. Wow them with that phone conversation. Make friends with them so that when they're coming in, they feel familiar. And we have a system that we follow in order to do that. You see our new patient intake form. We customize them for each of our clients. And we focus on certain things that we want to discuss on that phone call. That phone call can lead to the next thing that we would suggest focusing on, same-day dentistry. When I was in dental school, if you went through a treatment plan, I assure you that it took 800 visits to do scaling and root planing and 2 composites. We needed consults from everybody and clearances and 42 visits to prep the tooth. And you needed, each visit had a quadrant and then you had to redo all the quadrants. I mean, think about your patients, think about your demographic, think about your life in 2017, and think about how much free time you have to spend at your dentist's office. Remember, you're a dentist. You're fixated on dentistry. You live and die by it. You dream about teeth and crowns and all that stuff. And for you, spending all day in a dental office is what you normally do. But for most patients, they would much rather be with their kids on the soccer field or at the U2 concert or staying late at work to make more money or being home with their family to cook dinner or, quite frankly, laying on the couch, totally vegging out, watching Modern Family reruns. The more that you can offer them as a value added, not having to come back, the more value they will find in being a patient in your practice. Same-day dentistry is a key to that. Now, what we suggest and what we teach almost in our first session is a huddle, some morning meeting. In my office to this day, after 11 years, we've huddled every single day before we started. I refer to our meeting as a $1,000 meeting. You can call it a huddle or a YT squared meeting or whatever you want. 15 to 20 minutes, you and your team, super laser focused before your day starts on the people coming in today and what opportunities they represent. Some of them are new, some of them are old, some of them are in the middle, and all of them represent some unique opportunity for you to generate an increase in revenue. Maybe Mrs. Smith needs an FMS. Maybe Mr. Jones hasn't been in 2 years for a hygiene visit. Maybe, Bobby and Timmy Johnson are coming in. I don't know where I get these names from. Bobby and Timmy Johnson are coming in and they're 18 and 19 years old and they haven't been in a year. And we all know they're going to have some kind of rotten teeth because they're both college freshmen and they eat way too much sugar and drink too much Red Bull and all sorts of other bad stuff. Are we ready for them? Are we ready to do that OL or those 3 sealants or those 2 MFDs or that FMS or start that perio? Do we know when it's coming? Have we looked at our schedule so that we can optimize what's going on in the office? That all starts from the philosophy of wanting to do more procedures for our patients as a value added, not to pressure them, not because we're money hungry, but because it's what's valuable to them. Not having to come back to your practice is really helpful to a mom with 3 kids or a dad with 3 kids who's got 85 travel lacrosse games to attend this week. You're giving your patients a service and they will appreciate you for it. In order to do the same day dentistry, what we've learned is that your entire team, not just front people, not just back people, but everybody needs to be on the same page with how to kind of get a patient from the parking lot to the waiting room, from the waiting room into the treatment room, and from the treatment room out of the office and another patient in. That means that we can't have so many compartmentalized areas of our practice. We can't have only one person that does case presentation, and only one person that does insurance, and only one scheduler, only one treatment coordinator, and only one bathroom, maintenance person. Everybody needs to be able to contribute to optimize what goes on in the practice. Everybody needs to be able to pitch in when an opportunity presents itself. Think about kind of, a sports team. When the defense sets up and we go to the line of scrimmage in a football game, we see the defense, it presents an opportunity, and we all as a team need to be on the same page so that we can communicate, so we can exploit the opportunity. Whether it's a quad scale or an FMS or 1,952 crowns on a patient, we need everyone on the team to be situationally aware enough to help take advantage. Maybe your hygienist can help with a treatment plan. Maybe your dental assistant can help with the financial arrangement. Maybe the treatment care coordinator can come into the treatment room and help with a probing. Everybody can be on the same page so that that patient, instead of leaving and coming back, maybe doesn't have to. And that leads to the next, which is scheduling. I can't tell you, and I almost sigh with exhaustion when the topic comes up, how many times my clients and potential clients and dentists at lectures that I've done ask me about, better schedule. How do I create a good schedule? Should I block schedule? Rocks, paper, scissor, I think they use, or rocks, pebbles, stones, or boulders, pebbles, mortar. All that's great. What I was trying to achieve in my practice was the perfect schedule. Big stuff in the morning, little stuff in the afternoon, never stress, blah, blah, blah. And what I learned was that that's impossible. Number one, in 2017, no matter what you do, people are going to cancel. Their schedules change, and you may not be their number one priority. And be honest with yourself. If you had an appointment to have a crown done, and I offered you first row seats to see your favorite band tonight, at Madison Square Garden, or to go to a playoff hockey game, or to see the Yankees, or God forbid, the Red Sox, would you consider maybe postponing your dental treatment? Or what if your child got sick? Or what if your boss wanted you to stay? Or what if your car broke down? Or what if it was 85 degrees and sunny and it's been raining in New Jersey for like 2 months and you wanted to just get some sun on your face? You'd probably consider canceling. And certainly in an industry, in a profession where canceling has no real penalties, you may consider doing that even last minute. And on the other side, how do your patients control when they break a tooth, or when a crown falls out, or when they fall down the stairs and hit their face on the ground, or when their child's baby tooth bothers them, or when they get an infection? Those people, they're not going to call you and say, I know on Tuesdays you do pulpotomies in the afternoon, so I was waiting for the opportunity to come in. They're going to call with an emergency today. Your schedule will never be perfect. What most team members try and accomplish in scheduling is filling holes. We have a hole. Dentist freaks out and has a panic attack when there is a hole. We need to stick something in that hole to avoid panicking. Regardless of what that thing is, let's just get the hole filled. Let's stick something in there. That causes stress and tension and anxiety and frustration. And so what we suggest you look at is picking a goal, a financial goal for your day. Picking a number of patients, perhaps, that you want to stay within the confines of. But looking at your schedule not as a thing that has holes or no holes, not as something that needs to be perfect or imperfect, is something that's going to change and flex and vary from hour to hour and day to day, and accepting that and just sort of dealing with it, getting in your zen and saying, okay, it's 9 a.m. on a Monday. We know there's going to be emergencies. We're a good team. We communicate well. We have our systems. We're all kind of on the same page. We know what our goals are. We know what we're trying to accomplish. When the schedule changes, I'm going to communicate with my team front and back. We're going to stay on the same side and not become adversaries. And we're going to get our patients in to take good care of them and hopefully to generate more revenue. Because the good news is a lot of times when the schedule changes, it's not negative, it's positive. Mrs. Jones fell, she broke a tooth, she needs to come in right away. That means production. That means a crown or a root canal or extraction or an implant. And that's good for business. It's not good for her, but it's good for us. And us helping her is good for her. So make randomness and variability your new perfect. And that takes practice. It takes a lot of systems and policies. And it's certainly something that we can help you with at $1 Million PPO. I hope that you learned something from today's webinar. I hope that it gave you a little bit of perspective on what you're capable of in your practice. I hope that maybe you're a little excited about what you can have in your business and that there are options for you and that there are opportunities in your business and outside of your business to get help, to be happier and less stressed and more fulfilled, not only in your professional life, but in your private life. So, after this webinar, there's going to be a way for you to learn about and schedule a free strategy call with $1 Million PPO. We'd love to talk to you about your practice and learn more about how we can help you and perhaps give you the life that you've always kind of deserved and dreamed of. And if not, I hope that you learned something amazing today. And thanks for being a part of the webinar. I really appreciate your time.